Today's forum, What's on Your Mind, is presented by Cassidy Turley and Columbus CEO. This forum also enjoys support from Porter Wright Morris, an author, represented here today by my predecessor, Rich Terapak. Please join me in thanking our sponsors and their guests. Information about the speaker is in your forum flyer, so I will provide a brief introduction. And before I do that, I just want to thank AEP and Nick Akins for all the work that you're doing in the community. It's tremendous, the community corporate social responsibility that you take on, and I know that work, so I just feel the need to just thank you for that. Serving as interviewer today is a familiar face from WBNS 10 TV, one of our favorite evening co-hosts and co-anchors. Please join me in welcoming Jerry Revish. Our speaker is a seasoned, I didn't write that, engineering executive with vast experience in all aspects of the industry, from system planning and operations, mergers and acquisitions, to running a regional utility and overseeing regulatory relationships. A native of Louisiana, he began his career as an electrical engineer and rose through the ranks of both AEP and the former Central and Southwest Corporation, which merged with AEP in 2000. He is the president and CEO of American Electric Power. Please welcome Nick Akins. Nick, the microphone is all yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd, for that wonderful introduction. You know, they asked me to speak for 5 to 7 minutes, and I can't remember the last time I spoke 5 to 7 minutes about anything, so I'll try to keep it condensed. But it's about what's on your mind, and I think there's something that we just did. Mayor Coleman is here. I thank you for being here. David Harrison's here as well from Columbus State, and then Dan Good is here as well. And we just did an announcement earlier today announcing the American Electric Power Foundation has entered into a program with Columbus State. It's a $5 million investment over the next 5 years to focus on our inner city youth and ensure that they are able to develop a path toward the jobs of the future. And when we look at the issues that have occurred in the Columbus schools and the nature of what needs to be done, we believe now is the time to step up. The American Electric Power Foundation has been involved with K through 12, and certainly basic human needs has been the efforts in terms of our funding, and it's just a natural fit for us to focus on this effort at this time. And it really does focus on not only the awareness of middle school students to reach back and try to attract them to STEM type, science, technology, engineering, and math type of careers, but enable them to chart a path, whether they decide to go to college or not, to focus on their own futures and the jobs that are available in the marketplace. So at the end of the day, we'll have, in 5 years, there'll be 3,000 students that have been affected by this program, over 600 that'll go through the program and probably go on to college. And certainly there'll be an effort placed upon enabling those kinds of skills and abilities, the math, the science, and all those kinds of activities, so that they can either have a certificate when they get out of college, when they get out of high school, if they decide not to go to college, and still be job ready. Otherwise, they can enter into a dual credit system with Columbus State, where they actually have credits at Columbus State by the time they graduate from high school. So it's a clear stepping stone for the future. It's important for us to step forward and help in this regard, and it's certainly something that AEP is very focused on. You know, we serve 11 states. Now it's 13 states if you include transmission, but 11 states from a residential standpoint, 5.3 million customers. And we serve the middle part of the country, from the Canadian border down to the Mexican border. And obviously Ohio is our largest service territory. About 35 to 40% of AEP is Ohio. So it's critical for us to ensure that our future in Ohio is intact, and something that we're very much aware of and very focused on. And throughout our service territory, we're actively involved in the communities that we serve, and we'll continue to do so. You know, I talked a little bit about what's happened with the American workforce today and what we see. 3 years ago, you wouldn't have thought our industry would be so heavily focused on natural gas here in this part of the country. You wouldn't have thought that an entire floor at our One Riverside Plaza building is focused on cybersecurity. Those are clearly areas that need to develop. And also, as the customer interaction itself changes, we have to be focused on what the customer is really wanting to see, not only from a resource side of things, whether it's renewables, whether it's green power. We also are green, by the way. We have a lot of green power. But nevertheless, those selections are chosen. It's a very different thing in terms of technology today, but also at the customer end with smart grid activities, certainly focused on the way customers can enable more wise usage of their electric energy. That's critically important, and that's a resource. You know, we look at energy efficiency, we look at demand side management, all those types of activities as a tool for us to be able to serve a balanced portfolio for this country. And when I look at the policy side of what's occurring in this country today, we really do need to be focused on indigenous resources within the U.S. because we definitely have an opportunity to be energy secure. No time in my career, in the 31 years that I've been involved with this industry, have we had an opportunity, not only from a resource perspective, but also from a technology perspective, to address the future energy needs of our country. So when you think about some of the issues coming out of Washington, you get concerned. Certainly when it appears that coal is being taken out of the picture in terms of future generation capability, that's not a good thing because over almost 50% of the energy usage in this country is from coal-fired power. Ohio has a lot of coal. Now, we have an opportunity, and we've spent $7.2 billion making sure that we are cleaning up the emissions from our coal plants, and that work will continue. We also had the first integrated capture and storage of carbon in the world at our Mountaineer station in West Virginia, and we learned a lot in that process. So it's important for us to continue that technological innovation to maintain that piece of the portfolio. And then along with natural gas, we didn't even think about natural gas in this part of the country until the advent of the shale gas activity. And the Utica Shale is definitely an opportunity for Ohio to become a true energy producing state. When you think about it, and I come from Louisiana. Louisiana has always been an energy-related state. Texas, I lived there for a while, and same is true there. Ohio has the same opportunities, matter of fact, even more so because of the coal, the natural gas, the nuclear that's available here. Small modular nuclear reactors are being developed up in Barberton. Those are areas where we truly can have an impact, and Ohio is definitely a microcosm of the rest of the country. So when we think about the energy side of things, I really look at it as a social issue because clearly you pay your electric bills, you pay your energy bills, and it's important to be able to do that wisely so that we can ensure that we're spending very wisely and making sure that we don't drive up costs to our customers. Manufacturing, we're seeing industrial and manufacturing load continue to be tenuous at best in terms of growth. And that's something I think that this country needs to come together on to ensure that industrials and manufacturers can continue to grow. That is the foundation for what we call our commercial and residential loads as well. We need to ensure that continues because we can't move this economy around until there's a support structure in place from a regulatory structure as well as from a technological structure to ensure that we are able to advance. And we're clearly doing that at American Electric Power. We're very focused on rebalancing our portfolio. We've built a lot of natural gas units. We've done a lot of energy efficiency, wind power, solar. Those are activities that we're very much focused on. But at the same time, we have to think about the societal issues associated with that because typically some of the renewables costs are higher than standard fossil generation. And we need to ensure that we continue advancing the technology, but at the same time don't go overboard like Germany, for example. Germany is really in bad shape from an energy standpoint because they had what's called feed-in tariffs that provided for incentives for renewables, and the renewables have become so great that the economy continues to really depend on those incentives to come back, particularly, we're a rich country. Germany's a rich country, and most people are used to getting those feed-in tariffs back, and they want to keep it that way. Well, that becomes a societal issue. And now they're having to decide between food and electricity, and that's not a good thing. And when we think about our service territory, we're probably lesser on the socioeconomic scale in our service footprint as opposed to the Northeast or California. And we have to think about the increases in cost to our customers in the end. So we need to focus on this wisely. And I think our grid is changing dramatically so that we can support intermittent supplies like solar and wind, but we need to also continue to advance the existing technologies as well. So our outreach is completely different than it used to be. I mean, we've been in business 106 years. And we've had 104 years of consecutive dividend increases, quarterly dividend increases. I don't want to be the CEO that changes that. The first 2 years we didn't pay a dividend, so it's been consecutive. So we want to make sure that happens for the next 100 years. But I think we're at a definite opportunity to really change not only AEP and what it's about to our customers, but also change this country in the meantime. And that's something I think that's a very serious issue for us all. So I'll stop there and leave it open for Jerry for questions. Yeah.
Great. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. You touched on a lot of things that we're probably going to revisit here in the next few minutes. But just tell us, first of all, this is your second tour of duty in the Columbus area?
Yeah.
Tell us about the first one.
Yeah, so AEP bought Central and Southwest, and at the time I was in Dallas, Texas, in mergers and acquisitions. And at that time, there were 8 states going through a restructuring of some type, basically separating out their generation from the rest of the business. And only 2 states have done that so far, a portion of Texas and, of course, Ohio now for us. And at that point in time, I was doing industry restructuring and then moved into the transmission area, focused on the development of the transmission model to optimize the grid. So first 4 years, we're involved with that activity, bringing the family up. I have 2 sons, older son Matthew, younger son Christopher, and my wife Donna. It was a change because we'd always lived 30 years in Louisiana and 10 years in Texas, and then coming to Ohio, it was different. But I think the Ohio perspective has been very important because it's not only a great area to live, a great area for children to grow up, but also the infrastructure. I mean, when I was in Dallas, I couldn't get home, within an hour, hour and a half, and I only lived 25 miles away. And here, this has great infrastructure, and it's something I think has been beneficial to us all. But I thoroughly enjoyed it here. That was the first tour of duty. Went back when Mike Morris, my predecessor, came to the company. He really focused on the customer aspects, and we moved back to what we call our operating company model. We had centralized so much that AEP sort of lost its way in terms of the real focus with customers in the communities we serve. So we started to move back that direction. I went back to one of the operating companies, actually the one that I started with my career, Southwestern Electric Power Company, ran it for 2 years, and then came back here to run generation.
Yeah. So these 2 years you've been back. What are you most proud of what you've done so far?
Oh, I think there's a couple things. One is we have really reinvigorated our entire team to focus on the future of our company. In my 31 years, there is no time in our business have I seen it so much transformational and many activities occurring not only on the resource end, but the customer side as well. And when both ends of the barbell are changing in that respect, we've got to make sure we have the right path. And I've got a very, very strong management team. We learned through a little bit of adversity with the Ohio situation that occurred right after I became CEO.
The big derecho and the power outage you're talking about?
Well, it was that. There was the derecho, and then there was we went through the separation of our generation from a deregulation standpoint. And that was a difficult thing for the company. For us, 106 years of being entirely regulated, integrated regulated monopoly, to move toward that competitive side of things. We had done it in Texas, but it's different here in Ohio. It was a very important time with our company. I think that galvanized our management team, and we've inured benefits associated with that, but also it helped with the relationships in the community, because I probably would not know many of the people I know in the community had it not been for actually the community stepping up and supporting us as well.
When we have power outages, we want the lights back on fast, quick, and in a hurry. You know that. You get the phone calls all the time. What have you been doing to make the response faster and get the lights back on quicker?
Yeah, so we've been looking at our system, and there's a couple things we have to look at. Resiliency of the grid. And after the derecho took out 8 million customers in just a few, actually in a matter of hours.
Right.
And it was like being under a 500-mile jet wing, and it just cleans up everything underneath. And that was pretty interesting to us. I mean, I never even heard of a derecho before that. So it has taught us to make our grid more resilient. We look at steel poles, concrete poles, undergrounding, all those types of activities, and it really even went further with Superstorm Sandy. Some of our service territory was affected by Superstorm Sandy in West Virginia, and we were on calls with President Obama. President Obama was actually actively engaged, continues to be actively engaged. I lead the effort with AEP for the industry in terms of the lessons learned and issues to work with the federal government, so that we can ensure that we are able to recover customers much more quickly, and the President has been engaged in that as well. So it is an opportunity for us to rethink the grid. We have to rethink it in terms of not only just historically it's been a matter of a lot of overhead, a lot of poles that could break and that kind of thing. Well, you may have stronger poles, but you may have weaker parts of the system that you want to fall down so you can recover more quickly. I know that's sort of a strange way to think about it, but there's a lot of ways in which we're looking to really focus on that. During Superstorm Sandy, we had 67,000 employees working on Superstorm Sandy, and they came up from all the way from California. We need to make sure that if Ohio has another derecho, hopefully not, that we're able to respond quickly. And we put structures in place where all these walls come down with the federal government, where simple things like when trucks cross over state lines, they have to stop at way stations and that kind of thing. That slows down the recovery process. Those are important changes we need to make so we can get all the forces in the right place at the right time.
We're going to jump around on the questions a little bit. Don't want to make it all inquisitional. Mm-hmm. I do want to ask you, though, you're a musician. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I am a musician. So I've played the drums since I was in junior high school and continue to play today. We have a group called the Power Chords.
Power Chords.
Yep. Wonder where that name came from. But we play typically twice a year, once for the Homeless Families Foundation, and then we also do the Mid-Ohio Food Bank, Operation Feed. We just had one, 3 weeks ago, where we netted out $75,000 for Operation Feed. So it continues to grow every year. It's something we all enjoy. There's several executives that are involved with that, but that's one of the releases. I mean, you can always tell how the day has gone by, how hard I'm hitting the drums.
Okay. Okay, so if you've been before the PUCO, you play them harder, is that it?
I break heads.
You break heads?
No, I'm just
Are we using more electricity?
Just kidding.
Are we using more electricity now or less?
No, using less. I think two things. One is the economy itself. We still see a tenuous economy, so and that's really dragging the recovery in terms of electric usage. The other is energy efficiency, and it's hard to tell what proportion of which we're dealing with. But I think our industry, that's another way our industry is changing. We have to think of our business as optimizing the supply of energy as opposed to thinking about what the next large central station generation that we spend billions on to support an ever-increasing demand. And that's a definite change for our business, and it's something that we're very focused on.
You mentioned green power earlier in your remarks. How are you involved with solar, wind, geothermal, and other energy sources?
So we have 2,300 megawatts of wind, and mainly through purchase power arrangements, because we spend our capital on the grid itself and other things. But we have a huge amount of wind. We have some solar. Certainly solar here in Ohio. We have a requirement for solar, and we have a wind farm, a solar farm that we have a purchase power arrangement with. And that's it continues to be looked at. Obviously, you hear a lot about solar rooftop. We have one active state, Louisiana, actually, that has a 30% incentive from the federal government, 40% incentive from the state. And so you're seeing a lot of solar rooftop develop. That's really an issue for the industry and an issue for all of us, because we have to think about the fairness piece of that. When somebody puts solar on their roof, and usually it's and I have to say it, the rich people that are putting solar on their roof, they're still connected to the grid. And it's an intermittent supply. You only get supply when the sun's out. And when the sun's not out, we're supplying it. And I think, and really when you think about that from a customer perspective, if you get an entire credit, what's called net metering, I know it's different, I don't want to get too technical with you, but if you don't pay, at least for the grid portion of it, then all the other customers are subsidizing that, and usually it's the poor and the middle class. And I think California is certainly seeing that in many regards. Arizona certainly is, Idaho, and Louisiana. They think it's so small at this point, it's not a big issue, but that's how Germany, got started with the issues that they're having from an energy standpoint. So we have to really think about that from a balanced standpoint and a fairness standpoint.
So outside of basic price hikes to generate revenue, where else are you looking to grow the business?
Yeah, so it's really what we focus on investing in. We have a transmission, we're the largest transmission system in the country, the 765 kV transmission system that we have here in the east, and then in our western footprint we have a huge amount of transmission there as well that's throughout Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. And so we invest in transmission because that's the optimization of the grid. We continue to retire coal-fired generation. We'll be retiring about 25% of our coal-fired generation by 2015. And that's a significant challenge for us, but it's something that we're focused on so that we can replace it with other forms of energy. We built 5,000 megawatts of natural gas. The issue really becomes, with load not increasing, this industry needs to spend about $2 trillion over the next 2 decades just to refurbish the grid and put new generation resources in. That's an astounding amount of money. And it's something I think that begs us to ensure that we are spending wisely and spending efficiently. We believe transmission is the way to spend because it optimizes the grid and optimizes the resources to lower costs for customers. And we also continue to invest in our grid itself from a resiliency standpoint. So it's really what you spend on and making sure you have bang for the buck in that regard. We're fortunate at this point, we're not building a nuclear unit. A nuclear unit, just an idea for you, it costs about $7 to $8 billion to build a nuclear unit. The entire market cap of AEP is about $22 billion. So it really is betting the company on a relatively small amount of capacity for customers' demands. Coal is also high priced at this point from a construction standpoint. So we see the future for us at this point being natural gas, energy efficiency, smart grid activities, and renewables. And as long as they fit within the puzzle in a balanced fashion, we mitigate cost increases for customers, and it's risk managed. That's the way our entire country needs to look at it.
You're out and about a lot in this city. AEP is a great corporate citizen here. And you talked about the $5 million gift to Columbus State Community College this morning. What are some of the things that you would like to see in Columbus that you don't see? They could be quality of life issues, they could be infrastructure, they could be anything.
Well, I think certainly from a Columbus perspective,
One is, and I know that a lot of work's being done for a lot of, for the airport in particular, having nonstop flights to various parts of the country, because Columbus is, there's so much of the economy that can be tied to Columbus from a central standpoint. And I was just amazed, because when I moved here, you can drive from Marshall, Texas to El Paso, Texas, and it's the same distance as from Shreveport, Louisiana to Columbus, Ohio. And you go anywhere here, and it really isn't that far. And when you think about the transportation infrastructure and the things that could be done here from this city, it's just huge when you think about it. And I think we, obviously Mayor Coleman and others are trying to take advantage of that discussion. I think also I'd like to see more vibrancy in the arts community. A lot of work being done there. Used to be on the board of the Greater Columbus Arts Council and very interested in the arts, but I think there's all kinds of opportunity here, and it's untapped. We're doing a lot to address it, but Columbus is a great place to live, with Ohio State, the Ohio State here, and Columbus State and others. It just has all the tools to really take off, and it's a great city. And I think, and with the energy picture of Ohio, if we really focus on this country addressing the energy issues that we have, Ohio really is going to take off, because we look at shale gas activity. I'd like to see more shale gas development. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing right now with the pipelines, because we need to build capacity, but we need the economy to come back to build capacity. And if you build that, more natural gas usage will occur, and it'll be so vibrant for this economy. And then the ancillary businesses associated with that, for piping, tubing, chemical manufacturing, those would naturally take off in terms of from the Ohio standpoint. So I think it's just, the reins are being held back right now, but when the economy takes off, it's really going to take off for Ohio.
Your commitment to education, excuse me, is obvious with $5 million today. I'm sure you've done other things. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the school levy?
Oh, well, I'm supportive of the school levy. And it's just an interesting time. You don't really have the opportunities that we have in this community right now. And if you don't take advantage of it now, I don't know when it happens. Because not only everybody's aware, obviously, of the issues that Columbus schools have experienced recently, but even more so than that is just like when I mentioned earlier, our Ohio situation, where we came together as a team, and the community came together to support us. The same thing is happening with the Columbus schools. The Education Commission that Mayor Coleman was involved with, and others, that's the whole community coming together to really put an emphasis placed on education, and really to make sure there's a model to do it right. And that recipe exists. We just have to execute to it and make it happen, because you touch the lives of one child to where they go to college. And I can tell you this, because my parents were not college educated. They reinforced the need for education for all three of us, and we did that, and we've succeeded in many respects. Once one generation succeeds, from there on out, you have a great opportunity to continue to grow. So I firmly believe that now is the time, and everyone here are the people to get it done.
Well, the Senate says they have a deal today, and they've had deals before.
Yeah. For now they do.
Yeah. What do you make of what you've seen over the past 2 weeks in Washington?
I tell you what, if you try to run a business in this respect, it just becomes more of an issue all the time. They're visceral to one another, certainly polarized. They don't visit with one another anymore until some calamity. Well, that's not good for business. We can't continue to make the large-scale investments that we need to make, and they're long-term investments. We have to have some clarity, some consistency, not only from a regulatory model, but from a government model. to ensure that we don't have this stopping and starting. And I think there's a tendency, because they are so polarized, to wait until the last moment for anything. And that's not a good thing. We need to have that consistency so that we can make decisions to advance the economy. And I think that's a big reason why the economy is being held back at this point, because there's a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines, not being able to invest, not knowing where to invest. And I think that consistency is definitely needed. So whatever plan they come up with, whether it's a grand bargain or whatever, they need to do it. And they, instead of these band-aids of let's put 30 more days on it, 45 more days, and let's negotiate, and then you negotiate in day 45 for another 45 days, and that kind of thing has to stop.
In about 8 minutes, we're going to take some questions from the floor. That's the microphone we'd want you to step to, so we'd want you to start formulating some questions for Nick today. National energy policy, what do you want to see in it? What would you sign off on?
Well, I think, again, it's consistency. I think President Obama put Ernie Moniz in charge of the Department of Energy. He has a sense of balance. At MIT, he did the future of nuclear, the future of coal, the future of natural gas, the future of renewables. So he's done it all. I think that's the clear issue we need from an energy standpoint. We need to have balance, and we need to have a commitment to actually get it done. And right now, whether you're for or against Keystone Pipeline, I happen to be for Keystone Pipeline because I believe that it sends a signal to the economy that the energy industry is back in business, and that from a regulatory standpoint, we're not being impeded so much that we can't achieve the objectives. I think about the Environmental Protection Agency, and I don't know if there's any Ohio EPA people here, but we really do have to think about this from a transitional standpoint. The U.S. We just had carbon rules that came down from the Environmental Protection Agency. It really takes coal out of the picture because it requires carbon capture and storage, which we happen to know a lot about. But that aside, the transition's already occurring. We are retiring older, smaller coal-fired units, and we're replacing them with cleaner energy resources, and also retrofitting existing coal resources. So, the Waxman-Markey limitations, I think the targets back when they were trying to address that from a legislative perspective was a 17% reduction by 2020. We've already achieved a 15% reduction. We'll get an 18% reduction by 2015. And that's because of the transition that's already occurring. There is already, in our psyche, and what we do as a business is focused on making that transition to a cleaner energy future because we know that our customers want that. And I think when you think about the customer first and focus on what they actually want to achieve, we'll get there.
What's your management style? How do you like to work?
There's probably several people here that can answer that. Not you, Dennis. I think it's very open and collaborative. I enjoy working with my team. I really put a lot of focus on communication, a lot of focus on that team environment of working together to provide solutions, and it really has worked well because we have a great team, and I really do. We have a cultural transformation that's occurring within our company as well. We're very focused on advancing an open, collaborative culture where every employee can come to work every day, know what they mean in terms of the strategy of the company, but also go to work at the end of the day knowing how they contributed to that. Historically, we've had a lot of autocratic leadership. I mean, we have the second largest inland barge carrier in the country, and you can imagine a captain on one of our boats. It's pretty autocratic. And when you get out in the field with linemen and line servicers, the older supervisors with a lot of experience, the younger ones will typically not question what they're saying, but we have an emphasis placed on from a safety perspective to say anyone who's working in our company can raise their hand and say, I either don't understand this
or it's something that may be wrong from a safety perspective, and all work stops. And that's something I think that we're trying to pattern for the rest of our cultural initiatives of agility, entrepreneurship, all those types of things to ensure that our employees are able to live and grow in that environment.
When you make a hire, what are some of the things you're looking for, and what are some of the questions you ask that person?
Yeah, certainly when I'm looking for the energetic type. Certainly someone who is really focused on what their contribution can be. We've had we have a program in our generation area called the Goldfish Program, where the millennials and others who come in, they really want to be included in what's going on. So we have discussions with them, but it really is interesting to see the diversity and see the young faces in the audience today, and know and understand that there needs to be a support structure to ensure that they can contribute. But I also tell them they have an opportunity to change the world. I mean, at AEP, the emphasis we placed on energy policy in this country and the things that we do, we have a whole book of firsts that we have put in place. There is a real opportunity, and that's the kind of employee that you want, one that really feels like they own the company and come in and work in that fashion. And by and large, that's what we have.
So that we move seamlessly from my questions to yours, if you have a question, I'd like you to step to the mic, and we're going to be taking those questions in a few minutes. Education today, the graduates of today, you've made a $5 million commitment through Columbus State Community College. What do you want to see these kids come out of school with that they aren't coming out with now?
Oh, certainly math skills, not being on drugs would be a good thing. It's sort of one thing that hit me. Caterpillar's CEO told me one time that out of 10 applicants he gets for any particular job, 6 of them are automatically discounted because they either don't have the math skills or can't pass the drug test. And when you think about that from a workforce development perspective, particularly in our industry that focuses so much on STEM type activities, it's important for graduates in high school to have those tools, whether it's math, whether it's science, whether it's writing, technical writing. Those are important skills, and of course communication skills. Those are important. And for graduates to come out and have those kinds of skills, they can go to any job in our economy. And then obviously the program that's in place is a way to map out future success, from whether it's an associate's degree, where they can be a lineman or anything else from that perspective, IT technical representative, whatever. Those are key areas that we have to focus on, because we can't leave half the population behind. That's not sustainable from a U.S. standpoint.
Questions?
Yes, hi. Happy to break the ice here. Andy Campbell. Thank you,
Andy.
gentlemen, for being here today. I'm curious, our last Fueling Ohio's Future series, we learned about fuel cells, and kind of interesting, especially with the natural gas we're talking about in the shale gas, how that might affect generation for manufacturers, or maybe even a more distributed power source to take some of the pressure off the big plants far away, and to put that maybe on smaller generating capacity in maybe even neighborhoods. So
Yeah.
your thoughts on that technology?
Yeah, I think it's sort of interesting, because it's those kinds of technologies that make you think about, am I going to spend $3, $4, $5, $7 billion on a large central station generation that's a 60, 70, 80-year investment, versus the view of the advancement of technologies, particularly in the distributed generation area. And it's not just fuel cells, microturbines, all kinds of things, battery technologies that we've worked on. We have large-scale battery technologies in our service territory, but we've also, through our smart grid pilot here in Ohio, focused on community energy storage, which is battery technologies that are available. So, and it could be centralized solar, it could be any of those opportunities. I think you will see continued advancement of those technologies. They're still pretty expensive. So if you put in on a large-scale basis and tried to
socialize the cost in any way. It'd be much higher than others, but still a part of the portfolio and can actually add to the resiliency of the grid. And then the other thing to watch is automobiles themselves. The battery technologies are being advanced because of the automobiles, and in the future, your automobile may actually power your house. So when we think about it, we think about from a technological standpoint, we have to decide, are we going to be a part of that business, or are we going to be a caretaker of a museum? And I really don't want to be the latter. So it really is focused on that portfolio that makes sense for our customers.
Great. Next question. Thank you, sir.
I was going to come up until you said something about curator at a museum. David Desborough, COSI.
It's okay at COSI.
Yeah, we consider ourselves looking forward rather than backwards, although backwards sometimes helps you understand. Yeah. So actually, that's where my question wants to come from, and that is, you're putting forth some national vision about an energy policy. We both have engineering degrees. I've been in the energy areas since the 1970s. We've seen ebbs and flows in this. What kind of consensus do you see among your peers and the people who have to come together to finally give us a rational energy policy that embodies the type of elements and really the change mindset that you just laid out?
You know, despite the differences in Washington, there are some areas that are starting to come together from an energy standpoint. Obviously, Senator Portman has been involved with a bill on energy efficiency that really should make it through Congress. Unfortunately, got an amendment or two attached to it and sort of fell by the wayside, but it's still moving forward. You also see both parties, Senator Wyden, who heads the Energy Committee in the Senate, Senator Murkowski, who's the ranking minority member, they have come together and focused on an energy policy of the future as well. And I think you're having a really stronger dialogue about that today, given the U.S.'s position as an energy producer, particularly from the natural gas perspective, but coal and nuclear and everything else. It is an opportunity for us to lead the world in terms of that development. I do believe, though, that any result from an energy policy perspective needs to be respectful of the regional differences. Because there are significant regional differences on what resources are available in certain regions of the country. Take wind power, for example. The capacity factors, in other words, the amount the windmills actually turn as a matter of time, are much higher in the Great Plains, you know, in Oklahoma all the way up through Nebraska and into the Dakotas. So we believe in transmission to connect all that to the load centers. And if you optimize it in that fashion, you can really come along in terms of what an energy policy would look like. So I think there's hope. I really do. And I think more congressmen are becoming much more knowledgeable about the energy issue in general and what it means for this country and what it means for taxes and everything else and jobs. And I think that's critical.
Well, thanks for your leadership on that, and thank you as a recipient of AEP support, you know, for your leadership along those lines as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Sir.
I'm Dave Pritchard. I'm another engineer, retired, and I'd like to compliment you on your new technology approaches and your effort on STEM. That's a very difficult area.
Yeah.
Good luck. We're trying to make it work. In terms of energy policy, Ohio, I think, has a bill in the legislature now. I believe it's Senate Bill 58 that addresses Ohio's requirement for renewable energy, and there's a lot of fighting back and forth over that. Do you feel that amounts to a repeal of the energy requirement, or do you see it as a proper adjustment in the existing law?
Well, I think certainly AEP's position is that we support renewables. We support energy efficiency. And like I said earlier, it's a part of a balanced portfolio that includes everything. What we have to be concerned about, though, is the cost issues. So we've already have a lot of energy efficiency contracts that we've already signed and really meeting the standard that Ohio legislation provides for. But we want to make sure that in the future we continue to evaluate the cost of that relative to other options that are available to us. So it's not it's not that we're against or trying to take it out. That's not the case. We just want to make sure that we're spending our money wisely to ensure that we're able to get a balanced portfolio that includes everything. That's the way we feel about it. Now, I know, others in the state may feel differently, but that's the way AEP feels about it.
Thank you. Got time for another question or two? Well, let's give Nick Akins a round of applause today for
Thank you.
being such a great interview subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate you being here today, and thank you, Jerry. I hope you enjoyed today's forum. Remember that you can see it again and share it via YouTube link on our CMC website. We also encourage you to continue the conversation in our lobby over coffee and cookies. Nice. If you would like to be added to our email blast, just put your business card in the plastic sleeve and your name badge before you drop it in the basket. Please be sure to make your reservations for our next forum, which will be this Friday. Once more, please thank our sponsors, Cassidy Turley, Columbus CEO, and Porter Wright. Let's also, again, thank our speakers, Nick Akins and Jerry Revish. Thank you for being here. Have a great afternoon.